Hello everybody, this is David Oaf with Preferred Utilities, and I'm going to show you how to enter fuel air curve points into the BurnerMate Universal. At this point, you've already set up all your servos, you configured them, you zeroed, you spanned them. We put in our purge position, we put in our ignition position, and we verified those, and now we are running at low fire and we're warming up this boiler. If you're not doing all of that, there's other videos on YouTube that'll walk you through those steps. And this is actually one of the last videos in the series. So we're lit off. We've been warming up this boiler. We're still at our ignition position. And this is our training demo setup. We've got 3 servos. The one on the far left is the gas valve. The one in the middle is our FD damper. And the one on the right is our FGR valve. And on this boiler, we have oxygen trim, and I've got a potentiometer to change my oxygen, but I'm not gonna mess with it. You're gonna have to use your imagination. Okay, so now this can be done on either the LCD that you see in your screen now, or it can be done on the touch screen. This is actually one of those functions that's much easier on the touch screen, and that's what I'm gonna show you. So here's our touch screen, and right now we're at 1 degree on the fuel, we're at 10 degrees on the FD damper, and we're at 10 degrees on the FGR damper as well. If you like this for a low fire point, we can go ahead and hit store now, and that becomes a low fire. If you don't like this for your low fire point, it's probably best that you go through and put in a new ignition position and then re-verify it. With the BMU, you're allowed to have your ignition position be higher than your lowest curve point in terms of fuel valve position, but you can't be lower. So I can't start tuning and put a second point in because it would be higher than my ignition position, if that makes sense. So let's assume that this ignition position looks good. You know, 9% O2 at light off, that's not terrible. So I'm gonna hit store. And then these points should show up as our first curve point. And now, this is our low fire point at 1, 10, and 10. And assuming this boiler is warm, and my demo's always warm, so we can start moving up. I take baby steps, and I'm always gonna lead with air, so I'm gonna go take 10 degrees on the FD damper, and go to 12 degrees, and 1 degree looks good on the fuel. I'm gonna bump that to 2, especially on the gas valve. I'm gonna use baby steps. I'm gonna watch my O2, and we're gonna have to pretend that maybe my O2 is going down a little bit as I get off our ignition position. And I'm gonna go 14 degrees on my FD fan damper, and then I'm gonna go to say 4 degrees on my gas valve. And there are a couple of rules for putting in curb points. And the first is the fuel position for consecutive curb points have to be at least 2 degrees away. If they're not, at least, if you haven't moved the fuel valve at least 2 degrees, then the BMU assumes that you're overriding an existing point, you know, the point that you were on last. So give it a little FGR too. And again, I'm inputting all these numbers in the output column, and I'm reading them in the feedback column, and then the column to the right of that is just where your data is stored. And let's assume we like this curve point. Our O2 is good, our CO is good, our NOx is good, flame appearance, everything is good. If we like it, we're gonna press store, and that should give us our second curve point. Okay, not sure why FGR didn't show up in that first curve point. I'm using a very old OIT, so it might have an old program in it because I'm using an old demo that hasn't been updated. So there's our second curve point, and I'm gonna keep taking this boiler up in firing rate. So 14 degrees on the FD damper is gonna go to 16 degrees, and 4 degrees on my fuel valve is going to go to 5 degrees. You know, especially on fuel, we want to use baby steps. And I'll give it a little bit more FD damper. I'll give it a little bit more fuel. I have a pot I can tweak over here to make the oxygen change, but we're just gonna have to pretend. Let's pretend we're too lean. I'll give it a little bit more gas valve. And now we're at least 2 points away. O2, NOx, CO, everything's fine. Let's pretend our NOx is still a little high. So maybe I'll give it a little more FGR. Another rule for these fuel curb points is that you can't have more than a 10-to-1 ratio between your fuel valve movement and the movement on any other servo or any other output. And that's easy to do for your fuel and your FD damper. Those are going to have to track each other pretty closely. Where people get in trouble sometimes is on the FGR damper. You know, you usually don't need a lot of FGR at low fire or none to meet your NOx guarantee. But as you start getting hotter and hotter, you're going to need some FGR. Some people will be tempted to open the FGR valve relatively quickly, and you just have to bear in mind, for every 1 degree movement on your fuel valve, you can only have 10 degrees of movement on any other output, including the FGR damper, okay? So let's assume this point is good. I press store, and now we have our third fuel air ratio curve point. And you only need a minimum of 3. You can get out of commission mode if you have 3 points. And you know, you might ask yourself, why would I only put in 3 points? Well, you might, if this is a new boiler and you're going to do boil out, you might just want to get in 3 very low heat input points, get out of commission mode, check all your safeties so that the contractor, the end user, or somebody can do boil out. You know, once you're out of commission mode, you don't need a password, and assuming that you've checked all the safety limits, the boiler should be safe to run. You've taken it to these 3 points, you know that they're good, so it's after you check all the limit switches, it's safe to turn over the operators to do boil out. But we have our 3 curb points in. I'm going to just take the boiler up, my fake demo boiler. I'm going to take it up a little higher. And now that we're off low fire, my baby steps can get a little larger. So I'm going to go 21 degrees on the FD fan damper. I'm going to go 10 degrees on my gas. We'll pretend my NOx is creeping up again. So I'm going to open up my FGR damper a little bit. I'll take another baby step. I have never blown up my demo BMU. We'll go 10 to 13. And my NOx, everything looks good. So we're going to press store and make another point. Okay. Fastest boiler tune-up ever. Give it a little air. Give it a little more gas. Give it a little FGR. That looks good. So we'll take another baby step. Now, assuming this all looks good, I've checked my analyzer. If this was going to be my last curb point, I would check the gas flow at this point and make sure that I'm at high fire gas flow. If this is going to be my high fire point. On a real boiler, I'd probably fill up this whole chart. Even though the BMU interpolates between points and it has something called position pacing to make sure that the servos that have to travel a long ways between points don't get overrun by the servos that don't have as far to move. It sort of keeps all the servos together all the time. It's still going to work smoother if you have more curb points in. But for the sake of keeping this YouTube video short, we're just going to do 5 points. And now you'll notice at the bottom, I've got green lights and red lights. The green lights are curve points and they go in verified, but I have to verify my midpoints to get out of commission mode. So to do that, I change screens. So setup menu, curve setup, verify curve points, move over to gas. And the first thing I do is press store. And if I were like coming out of automatic, pressing store gets me to my nearest curve point or midpoint. So now I press store, I'm at my highest curve point. It says it's verified. So now I'm gonna hit the down button, and the down button is gonna move all of my servos to the midpoint between my fourth and fifth point while keeping all the servos on curve. And it tells me midpoint not verified. As long as combustion is okay, look in the back, check the analyzer, hit store, and now that midpoint is verified. There we go. I press down, and that puts me into 0.4. And this is a curve point that I put in, but now I'm going down in firing rate versus up in firing rate, and usually because of there's a little bit of hysteresis you can never really get rid of. You're usually going to be a little bit richer coming down than you were going up. And assuming combustion is still good, I don't need to verify that point because it's already verified, it's green. I'll go down to the next midpoint. And in real life, I would leave it there long enough to make sure that combustion is good at this point too. Press store, and that light turns green and that midpoint is verified. And I keep doing this. And you might be able to hear the servos moving as we do this. Here's the midpoint between points 2 and 3. If I like combustion, I press store, and now it's verified. I'm gonna hit the down button to get me to point 2. Hit the down button again to get me to point 1.5, if you will. Press store if combustion is okay. And now that light turns green and it should say verify complete. There we go. Now there's one more step to get out of commission mode. I note what my high fire fuel position is. In this case, it's 20 degrees. And I start with the menu button. I go to setup. I go to curve setup, and I hit this set high fire button. And I'm going to put 20 degrees in here and press store. And now I'm going to hit menu, setup menu, curve setup. And now I'm going to push the commission mode button to get out of commission mode. And as long as you did everything right, it's going to let you out of commission mode. If you violated any of those rules for putting in curve points, it won't let you out of commission mode, and it'll give you an error message that helps you figure out what's going on. And now I'll go over the boiler overview screen, and we're in auto, and our steam pressure is 9 psi and the set point's 20 psi. So our boiler steam loop is going to be trying to increase firing rate to catch up to set point. And now the boiler can be run in manual or can be run in automatic. The next thing you should do is tune your loops, and that's hard to do. That's hard to show well on a demo, but I'll show you at least how to get to those screens. I hit the menu button, I hit the setup menu button, and then I go to tuning. And now for every loop that we've configured, I'm going to get a paperless recorder type screen. And this is the boiler master screen. And here you can see what your boiler outlet pressure is. You can see what your set point is. I'm in auto, I'm in local, my firing rate's 100%. And down here is my proportional band, my gain, and then here is my minutes per repeat, my integral, and I can play with these numbers and give the boiler step changes and set point and watch how the boiler responds. And your set point, your firing rate, and your process variable will all show up on this screen. And it's hard to do with a demo, but this is a very handy screen for when you're tuning, because it's sort of a paperless recorder screen. And you'll do this for all the loops that you have. And then after you've checked the safety limits on the boiler and demonstrated all the safety limits to the owner and had them sign off on those, then you're pretty much done.